I was 17 when I joined the yearbook committee. Not by choice, mind you. My guidance counselor said I needed more extracurriculars for college applications, and yearbook seemed like the easiest option. Just take a few photos, write some captions, done. The committee met in room 204 every Tuesday and Thursday after school. There were only 5 of us. Sarah, the editor-in-chief, who took everything way too seriously. Marcus, the photographer who barely spoke. Jennifer, who only joined to get closer to the football team. Tom, the class clown who somehow ended up as our layout designer. And me. Mrs. Henderson, our advisor, was ancient. She'd been teaching at the school for 37 years and overseeing the yearbook for 23. She had this habit of leaving us alone while she graded papers in the teacher's lounge, which was fine by everyone. The weird stuff started in October. Sarah was organizing photos from homecoming when she found something strange. In one of the group photos, there was a girl we didn't recognize. She was standing with the junior class, smiling at the camera like she belonged there. But none of us knew who she was. Maybe she's new, Jennifer suggested. But we'd all been at the dance. The school only had about 400 students total. A new face would have been noticed. Marcus, who'd taken the photo, was adamant he'd only photographed the students present. "I line everyone up myself," he said. There was no extra person. We asked around, showed the photo to teachers, students, even the principal. No one recognized her. The girl appeared to be about 16, with long dark hair and a vintage-looking dress that didn't match what anyone else was wearing. Sarah wanted to crop her out, but Mrs. Henderson said we couldn't alter official school photos without proper documentation. So we left it alone. Then it happened again and again. The mystery girl started appearing in more photos. Basketball games, club meetings, even random hallway shots. Always in the background, always smiling, always wearing clothes that seemed slightly out of place. Sometimes she'd be talking to students, but when we asked those students about her, they'd look confused. "I wasn't talking to anyone," they'd say, staring at photos that clearly showed them mid-conversation with her. By December, we were all rattled. Tom stopped making jokes. Marcus started taking fewer photos. Jennifer quit coming to meetings. Sarah became obsessed, spending hours examining every image with a magnifying glass. That's when Mrs. Henderson told us the truth. Her name was Rebecca Mills, she said quietly, pulling out a yearbook from 1987. She was a junior, sweet girl. She died in a car accident 2 weeks before yearbook photos were taken. The page fell open to Rebecca's memorial section. There she was, the same girl from our photos, smiling from a professional portrait that looked exactly like her modern appearances. Every few years she shows up in the yearbook photos, Mrs. Henderson continued. I've been documenting it for decades. She seems to want to be remembered, to be part of the school community she never got to finish with. I thought this was supposed to be comforting, but it wasn't. Because that night, I developed the photos from our last committee meeting, and there was Rebecca sitting in Jennifer's empty chair, looking directly at the camera with an expression I'd never seen before. She wasn't smiling anymore. The next morning, I found out Jennifer had been in a car accident driving home from school. She was in the hospital, critical condition. The doctors said she might not make it. I grabbed the photo and ran to Mrs. Henderson's classroom. She took one look at it and went pale. "This has never happened before," she whispered. "She's never looked angry." That was 6 months ago. Jennifer recovered, but she transferred schools. She won't talk about what happened. The yearbook committee disbanded. Mrs. Henderson retired early, but I still have that photo. And sometimes, late at night, I swear Rebecca's expression changes. Sometimes she's smiling again, that sweet, sad smile from the memorial page. But other times, she's staring right at me with those angry eyes. The final yearbook came out last week. I flipped through it nervously, dreading what I might find. And there she was, in the senior class photos. Rebecca Mills, listed as a graduate of our class, wearing the same vintage dress she'd worn in all those candid shots. But this time she wasn't in the background. She was front and center, smiling that sweet, sad smile. Nobody else seemed to notice. My classmates flipped past her photo without a second glance, like she'd always been there, like she'd earned her place among us. I asked Sarah about it. She looked at me strangely and said, "Rebecca?" "Yeah, she's been in our class since freshman year. Quiet girl, but really nice. Don't you remember her?" I don't know what's happening to everyone's memories, but I remember the truth. I remember the investigation, the fear, the anger in her eyes. But somehow, Rebecca has rewritten herself into our reality. She's not haunting the yearbook anymore. She's become part of it. I graduate next month. I can't wait to leave this place behind. But I have a feeling Rebecca Mills isn't done with our school yet. She's been waiting 37 years to graduate. And now that she has, I'm terrified of what she might do with her newfound freedom. Senior year was supposed to be easy. I'd already gotten into state, my parents were proud, and all I had to do was coast through my last few classes. AP Literature was my biggest challenge, and honestly, I was struggling. That's why I was so grateful when Ethan suggested we form a study group. Ethan was one of those students who made everything look effortless. Perfect grades, perfect attendance, perfect college prospects. He was quiet, but when he spoke, teachers listened. "We should meet at my place," he said after class one day. "My parents are out of town a lot for work. We won't be disturbed." The group consisted of me, Ethan, and 3 other students, Maya, David, and Christine. We were all in the same situation. Decent students who needed to ace our final semester to secure our college futures. Ethan's house was impressive, a massive colonial in the nicest part of town, with a perfectly manicured lawn and a circular driveway. The inside was immaculate but cold, like a museum. Family photos lined the hallways, but they all looked strangely formal and posed. We met in his basement, which had been converted into a study room. Comfortable chairs, good lighting, a whiteboard, and shelves lined with books. It was perfect for our needs. Our first few sessions went well. Ethan was an excellent tutor, patient and thorough. He had insights into the literature that none of us had considered. Under his guidance, we were all improving rapidly. But there were odd things about Ethan's house. The refrigerator was always empty except for bottled water. I never saw his parents, even though their cars were sometimes in the driveway. And the photos on the walls. The more I looked at them, the more I realized they were all of Ethan, but spanning decades, as if he'd been the same age for years. "How long have you lived here?" I asked him one evening. "My whole life," he said, not looking up from his book. My family has deep roots in this community. Maya started missing sessions in November. She said she was feeling sick, but she looked fine at school. David followed a week later, claiming he was too busy with other commitments. Christine lasted until December before she stopped coming altogether. I guess it's just us, Ethan said, when I showed up to what I thought would be our final session before winter break. That's when I noticed the photos on the walls had changed. There were new ones mixed in with the old ones. Photos of Maya, David, and Christine. But they were wearing clothes from different decades. Maya in a 1960s dress. David in an 1880s Letterman jacket. Christine in 1990s grunge style. Those are interesting photos, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Oh, those. My parents like to collect school memorabilia. This town's high school has such a rich history. I made an excuse and left early. The next day, I tried to find Maya, David, and Christine at school. But when I asked about them, teachers looked confused. Maya? I don't have a Maya in any of my classes, my English teacher said. David transferred months ago, said another. Christine graduated last year, claimed a third. But I had clear memories of all of them. We'd worked together for months. I had their phone numbers, their social media contacts. But when I tried to reach them, the numbers were disconnected and their profiles had vanished. I went to the school office and asked to see the current enrollment records. None of them were listed. I asked about graduation records from previous years. Nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those photos, about the empty refrigerator, about Ethan's perfect knowledge of decades of literature. I snuck out of my house at 2 a.m. and drove to his neighborhood. The house was dark, but through the basement window, I could see the study room. Ethan was there, sitting at the table with his books open, studying alone. But he wasn't alone. I could see the shapes of other students in the chairs around him. Faint, translucent figures that looked like Maya, David, and Christine. They were all staring at empty notebooks, their mouths moving silently as if reciting lessons. I ran back to my car and drove home, my hands shaking. The next morning, I went to the school library and started researching. I found old yearbooks, newspaper archives, anything I could get my hands on. The pattern went back 50 years. Every few years, a group of struggling students would disappear from records. Not all at once, but gradually, like they'd never existed at all. And in the local newspaper archives, I found obituaries. The same students, dying in accidents or from illnesses, but their deaths were spread across decades. Maya Chen died 1967, car accident. David Rodriguez died 1983, sudden illness. Christine Walsh died 1992, house fire. But I remembered studying with them just weeks ago. I never went back to Ethan's house. I stopped going to AP Literature altogether. I took the failing grade and barely graduated. My parents were disappointed, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get out of that town. I'm in college now, 3 states away. I've tried to forget about that study group, about Ethan and his perfect tutoring skills. But sometimes, late at night in my dorm room, I get text messages from unknown numbers. Ready for tonight's session? They ask. Don't give up on your education, they say. Ethan's waiting for you. I never respond. I just turn off my phone and try to sleep. But I know that somewhere, in a basement study room in my hometown, Ethan is still holding his sessions, still collecting students who need help with their grades. The worst part is that I sometimes catch myself missing it. Those study sessions were the only time I truly understood literature, the only time I felt intellectually challenged. My grades in college are mediocre at best. I struggle with concepts that Ethan made seem effortless. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice running away. The other students seemed happy in their eternal study hall. They'd found their place, their purpose. Maybe being forgotten by the world isn't such a terrible fate if you're doing something you love. But then I remember their empty eyes, their silent mouths moving in endless recitation. I remember that they're not really students anymore. They're echoes, trapped in a loop of perpetual learning with no hope of graduation. Last week, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a college-level literature textbook with a note in Ethan's handwriting. "You're falling behind. Let me help." I threw it away, but I can still feel its weight in my hands. The temptation to return, to accept his offer, to finally understand the things that continue to confuse me. Still teaching lessons that last forever. I was a senior when Mr. Kellerman started substituting at our school. He wasn't like the other subs we usually got, burned out retirees or college students making quick cash. Mr. Kellerman was young, maybe early 30s, with an easy smile and this way of making even the most boring subjects seem interesting. He first covered my AP history class when Mrs. Martinez was out sick. Instead of just reading from her lesson plan, he told us stories about the Revolutionary War like he'd been there. The detail was incredible. The smell of gunpowder, the weight of muskets, the way soldiers' boots squelched in mud. We were all captivated. "How do you know so much about this stuff?" Ashley asked. "I've always been fascinated by history," he said. "Sometimes I feel like I've lived through it all." He laughed when he said it, but something in his eyes made me uncomfortable. Mr. Kellerman became our favorite substitute. Whenever a teacher was absent, we'd hope he'd be the one to cover. He subbed for every subject: math, science, English, even art. And he was good at all of them, really good. "Guys like a walking encyclopedia," my friend Jake said, after Mr. Kellerman taught us advanced calculus concepts that weren't even in our textbook. But there were things about him that didn't add up. He never seemed to age, for one thing. I'd been seeing him around school for months, and he looked exactly the same as the first day. Most of us seniors were showing signs of stress. Bags under our eyes, breakouts from lack of sleep, the general wear of pushing through our final year. But Mr. Kellerman always looked fresh and energetic. He also seemed to know things about our school that he shouldn't have known. References to events that happened before he started working here. Knowledge about students who'd graduated years ago. Once, he mentioned a prank that happened in 1987, describing it in perfect detail. "How do you know about that?" I asked. "Oh, someone must have told me," he said quickly. "You know how teachers talk." The strangest thing was his availability. No matter what day, what time, what subject, Mr. Kellerman was always free to substitute. He never seemed to have other commitments or conflicts. It was like his entire existence revolved around our school. I decided to do some investigating. I started by asking the office staff about him. Mrs. Chen, the secretary, looked confused when I brought up his name. Mr. Kellerman. I don't think we have a substitute by that name. Sure we do, I said. He's been here for months. Tall guy, dark hair, always wears a blue tie. She checked her records. I don't see any substitute named Kellerman. Are you sure you have the name right? I asked other teachers. Same response. According to the official records, Mr. Kellerman didn't exist, but students remembered him. We all had stories about his classes, his teaching methods, his uncanny knowledge. So I started asking older students, graduates who'd already left for college. I found their social media accounts and sent messages. The responses were disturbing. "Oh yeah, Mr. Kellerman," wrote a girl who'd graduated 3 years earlier. "He subbed for my chemistry class all the time. Really knew his stuff." "Mr. Kellerman taught me Shakespeare senior year," said another. "Best substitute we ever had." But according to the school records, these students had graduated before Mr. Kellerman supposedly started working here. I dug deeper. I found references to him going back decades. Yearbook photos from the 1990s showed a man who looked exactly like our Mr. Kellerman, standing in the background of group shots. Newspaper clippings from the 1980s mentioned a substitute teacher with the same name helping with school events. The man hadn't aged a day in 40 years. I decided to confront him directly. I stayed after school one day when he was covering detention duty and asked him point blank how long he'd been working at our school. "Oh, it feels like forever," he said, with that same easy smile. "Time flies when you're doing what you love." But how long exactly? His smile faltered for just a moment. "Why do you ask?" "I've been doing research. I found records of you dating back to the 1980s. You look exactly the same." He was quiet for a long time, staring out the classroom window at the empty hallway. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, sadder. "I was a teacher here once," he said. "A real teacher, not a substitute. I had my own classroom, my own students. I loved this place more than anything." "What happened?" "I got sick. Cancer. Died in 1979, right at the end of the school year. I was supposed to retire that June, but I never made it." He looked at me with eyes that suddenly seemed ancient. "I couldn't leave. This school was my life, my purpose. So I stayed." "You're dead." "I'm what I need to be. When teachers can't make it to their classes, I step in. When students need help understanding a concept, I'm there. I've been keeping this place running for decades." I should have been terrified, but instead I felt sad for him. "Don't you want to move on?" "Where would I go? This is my home. These are my students. Every generation that passes through these halls is part of my legacy." I graduated 2 months later. I went to college, got a degree, started my career. But I never forgot about Mr. Kellerman. Sometimes I'd get updates from younger siblings or friends still in high school. They'd mention their favorite substitute teacher, the one who made every subject interesting. "Oh, you mean Mr. Kellerman," I'd say. "Yeah, how did you know?" "Lucky guess. Last month, I went back to visit my old school. I was curious to see if he was still there, still teaching, still helping students learn. I waited in the parking lot until classes ended, watching for his familiar figure. I saw him walking across the courtyard, carrying a stack of papers, heading toward the main building. He looked exactly the same as he had 5 years ago. As he passed by my car, he glanced over and saw me. He smiled and waved, just like he used to do when I was his student. Then he mouthed something through the window. "Thank you for understanding." I drove away knowing that somewhere, in classrooms across the country, there are probably other Mr. Kellermans. Teachers who loved their job so much that death couldn't make them leave. Dedicated educators who found a way to keep serving students long after their time should have ended. But my peace didn't last long. 2 weeks after that encounter, I started having dreams. Dreams where I was back in high school, sitting in Mr. Kellerman's class, but I was the only student there. He'd teach me things I'd never learned, advanced theories, complex equations, historical events that seemed too detailed to be real. I'd wake up exhausted, my head buzzing with information I couldn't possibly have known. When I researched some of the things he taught me in these dreams, I found that they were accurate. Obscure historical facts, mathematical proofs, literary analyses that scholars had debated for years. Then I realized what was happening. Mr. Kellerman wasn't just teaching current students. He was reaching out to former students, continuing our education even after we'd graduated. The dreams weren't dreams, they were lessons. I tried to resist, staying awake with caffeine and willpower, but eventually exhaustion won. And when I finally slept, I found myself back in his classroom, notebook in hand, ready to learn whatever he wanted to teach me. The strangest part is that I don't mind anymore. His lessons are fascinating, his knowledge infinite. Maybe some teachers are just too good to let go. And honestly, I think that's kind of beautiful, even if it's terrifying.